Hi guys, welcome to the next video on the chapter Nationalism in India. In the previous video we discussed about the non-cooperation movement. In this video we'll discuss about the civil disobedience movement. Now, when the non-cooperation movement ended in the early 1920s, the Congress at that time had divided into two particular groups, one being the moderates and the liberals and the other being the radicals. Now, the ideology and the tendency what to do next differed in both the groups. In the moderate group, they had an ideology that because the mass struggle was getting out of hand and they were tired of all this, they decided to participate in the elections and to the provincial council, and then from there within the government they will fight the British. So the leaders there were Motilal Nehru and C.R. Das. So this group had thought that getting into the politics and the government would be the right way to fight the British. The radicals on the other hand was thinking that more radical agitation was needed and only then that could get us full independence. So they had come to a thinking that we need full independence, and for that we had to fight the British more, we have to have more agitations. So the leaders here were Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose, the main leaders. Now, the civil disobedience movement had the beginning with the economic condition as well, because in any movement, economic condition plays a huge role. So, in the early end of 1920s, the situation all over the world, economic situation all over the world was dire because there was an economic depression. So the agricultural prices were falling, and this led to a problem when the peasants could not sell their harvests. So the peasants could not sell their harvest, they could not generate revenue out of it. So it was creating a dire situation for the peasants, and overall situation across the world as well, economic condition was dire. So people were under stress, people were not happy with the governments. Now, at the same time, in the end of 1920s, the government came up, the British government came up with the Simon Commission. So under Simon Commission, they actually wanted to check how the constitutional machinery was working in India. So this was the commission, why the commission was formed, to look into the functioning of the constitutional system in India. But the problem with this commission was that there was no Indian representative in that. There was no Indian member, only Britishers were there. So this was the major problem with the Simon Commission. So people opposed it. When the Simon Commission actually arrived in India, then it was opposed. The reaction was that go back Simon. So it was a very famous slogan, Simon go back, and the Muslim League and the Congress both participated in it, and unanimously the Indians rejected the Simon Commission. So the Viceroy made an offer then, Lord Irwin, that dominion status for India will be given in some time. He had not specified at what time India will get dominion status, but they were ready to provide dominion status to India, and he had asked for a round table conference to discuss a future constitution for India. So this was the offer by Viceroy, but that does not satisfy the Congress leaders. At this point they wanted more. So they wanted more assertive reasoning from the government as well. So the Congress became more assertive, the liberals and the moderate eventually lost their influence, and to gain more out of that, the Congress in the Lahore session of 1929, December 1929, Congress formalized the demand for Purna Swaraj or full independence. So in Lahore session, famous Lahore session of 1929, government decided they'll go for the Congress decided they'll go for Purna Swaraj. And 26 January 1920 was declared as the Independence Day. So this was the situation and the reaction against the Simon Commission. Now, Gandhi eventually decided that civil disobedience movement had to start because Viceroy was adamant on its offer. So Gandhi, before starting anything, wrote a letter to the Viceroy where he mentioned what are the demands that they have from the government. So it included demands from various sectors, from industrialists, peasants, everywhere. But the main demand was that the government should abolish salt tax, because they considered the tax on salt to be the most oppressive phase of the British rule. Because salt is something that you can easily get for free, it is available, and you tax that commodity which is an essential commodity. So for them, this was the most oppressive phase of the British rule. So Gandhi gave an ultimatum date to them for 11th March 1930, and by then if they don't accept the offer, Gandhi will launch the civil disobedience movement. Now, the Viceroy did not agree to this demand, and eventually Gandhi, as he had suggested in the letter, he would start the civil disobedience movement. Now, so under the civil disobedience movement, the first thing that Gandhi did was the Salt March. So he traveled a distance of 240 miles from Sabarmati Ashram to a coastal town of Dandi in Gujarat, and he broke the law by manufacturing salt by boiling salt water. So Gandhi on 6th April, a very important date for the Dandi March, when it ended on 6th March, he broke the salt law. This marked the beginning of the civil disobedience movement, where the people will disobey the orders of the government. And people were asked not only to refuse cooperation like in the case of non-cooperation movement, but actually break colonial laws. So people were going to break the laws. So thousands broke the salt law. Then foreign clothes were boycotted, liquor shops picketed, then peasants refused to pay revenue and tax, village officials resigned, people violated forest laws. So all these things were just done to have a massive agitation against the government. The government, on the other hand, became aggressive to the civil disobedience movement. So a lot of Congress leaders were arrested, and this led to a lot of violent clashes as well. So the crowds demonstrated in the streets of Peshawar, industrial workers in Sholapur attacked all structures. So the impact again had become violent, even though Gandhi had thought that we will just break the laws, but we will not become violent. But the movement had become violent. So police posts, municipal buildings, law courts, railway stations, they were all destroyed and attacked. The government's response to this was again very brutal, because whenever the government has seen aggressive agitation, it has always repressed that. And the peaceful satyagrahis were also attacked, women and children were attacked, and almost 1 lakh people were arrested. So a lot of arrests happened, and this led to a situation where Mahatma Gandhi once again decided that he has to call the civil disobedience movement, because it had become violent and people were getting arrested, people were getting hurt, and the government had become quite oppressive. And he signed a pact with Irwin in March 1931. This is known as the Gandhi-Irwin Pact. Now, what exactly was there in this pact? This was held in a round table conference in London, and the government released under this all the political prisoners, but after releasing them, the discussion on how dominant status could be done, what could be the timeline, what are the demands of the Gandhi and other Congress members, that led to breaking down of the negotiations, because they could not actually come up with the terms, both of them. So Gandhi discovered new cycle of repression after coming, and he said that we need to start the civil disobedience movement again. So again, civil disobedience movement was started. Again, Congress leaders were in jail. Congress was declared illegal, and series of measures had been taken to prevent meetings, demonstrations, and boycott. So again, the government had become quite repressive, but with new vigor, civil disobedience movement was started. But eventually, after a year, it also died down without leading to any fruitful result. But still, the Congress had shown that the people are with them and they want to join in the agitation. So this was the important point from this civil disobedience movement. We are not going to end this. In the next video, we'll discuss the later part of the civil disobedience movement. Thank you so much.